I love what you did here, Carl. I think you need just a little bit of work. I called the same thing on Portman before. You know what I'm talking about. He looks at you're not looking at the short on the Pizza Hut versions, the market that you're dealing with correctly. I don't think, given topology, wave function, hydrogen being so important nowadays in the game of kings, and why you want the local code to be mathematically geometric to the chessboard configurations. Here they give you a lot of, even at the opening courses of things that I've done. I think they let me do it, right? Where's my tools? Is this it? Yeah, here we go. So we can do. I forget which gambit this is. It starts with a G. At any rate, inside here, I could probably move this, and that would be originally this move here. Okay, they're not going to do anything. It looks like I get to move this here, so we'll call that this here. We'll move that here, I do believe. What do they do? I think they move this here. This comes over, I do believe, to be here. This comes down here. I do this. What do they do? They do, what did they do? They do this. I do this. They do, how does it work here? I want to think it's this, maybe. But after that point, that's that original gambit. And of course, I want to give you my gambit here. This is my Knight's Tour gambit. Obviously, semi-similar. But what we're going to do is, obviously, in the Knight's Gambit, this comes here, this comes here. These are going to be my house piece and the chess gambit in general. In terms of, you know, what we might be dealing with here for the fundamental structures of what we're dealing with this type of Terminator gambit. Now, realistically, Carl, I would tell you, you know, in algebraic speaking like that, what the real first move is, really hydrogen wants to be any one of those pieces. So you have to talk about why the original AI gambit and stuff like that of just regular fundamentals of teaching chess, how the moves work, what are the pieces, you know, how does that behavioral mechanic work to then coming up in grid positions and why that's relative to things in probability of success and other models, is again basically we're going to say, well, the move was this comes, or this doesn't even move, just for supersymmetry we'll do this as the basic pawn, you know, and it's going to move like this because once it has its first limit it's going to continue to do so. But black here knows the game, you know, we're just saying for funsies first expiration down here, we're done, my little guy is dead. What happened here in the little AI bot simulator for what's the going downs around here? It could be this or this. It could be this or this in the first move. It could be this to this, and it could be this to what would be a two-phase move that actually give me the next set. Once I have that from there, it'll be this. And the response to that is I can't move it again, and the actual player's team would be moving this. Now, when you do collisions in MIT, let's say, for instance, once I knew that, okay, so that's in that position now. That's actually what I know. What do I have to do? You know, me, I'm going to have to move what I know is the most congruent move, one or two stations, but let's say I could take the farthest route instead of just doing AI and neural net learning. And we make that jump up to that position. Now, somehow in here I must have chose another gambit. I sure did. Now, this was for congruency on supersymmetry, but let's say that wasn't what was happening here before this goes to a checkmate right there in a couple of moves. I do believe it is. Let's do, we got to open it up here. There we go. Oh, we want this, I do believe. It would be this to this. But you wouldn't know that because it wouldn't necessarily register unless it's an attack. This comes here, and of course this will have you in checkmate. Unless I went the other way with it. I must have. So we went back. You have to go here to here to here. Now, because that could have took one way or the other, or this one takes that one, or I did things on the moves for that gambit, I guess. I forget which gambit it was. Which basically turns into that 3-move checkmate, where it's whatever, you move this one, you catch the bishop and the queen on him, and from black's perspective, though, because you would be some white pawn that doesn't know anything, right? And that's some node that goes into the game quadrant, so why, you're platformed as a new beginning rookie or something under those standards, because that's what you're going to do before you get into middle phase or end phase. Because at that gambit, probability of that supersymmetry could say, given what my strategy is white normally here, actually gives, this strategy some kind of index, because off those first 2 moves, there's some superpositions of why that gambit works that way, right? Now, if you're quantifying behaviors like that, let's call it free particle wave, in that way, what you're dealing with is a chess gambit like that, where I'm still moving under phases. Now it'll work congruency, e this to whatever plus minus e1 or e prime at that level of most common gambits, but that was definitely missed here in terms of why you have to know that to understand the principles behind a gambit instead of Pavlovian force learned versions of that. But you would do it in the same way that the original gambit teaches you. Alright, then it'll go back when you hit the next button and you'll hammer in that gambit that I just did originally. And I only played that once. That was pretty good, Carl, I gotta admit, in terms of what that gambit may represent comparatively to my gambit. But in there, again, you'd still have the limitations of generating gambit limits of, realistically, between flows, there's maybe 1 or 2 alternate moves, and you play them, right, before you get to some very radical set where I have multiple options and have to break down that game that way from that original base structure of that symmetry, right? Because this game will play 1s and 0s autonomously with it, and as you program it, so you would want to program some kind of limit like that. Or y to the king or the bishop, they're actually supersymmetried to any kind of phase here. And if this has less value than this, then you would honestly say, from the way to dictate structure, it could just make some phase jump, right? And that's how gambits work. So, I love the topological here. I think it was an amazing subject matter. But again, when we get into why this gambit is super critical and useful in a lot of other topological models, is because, again, we can play this in the same way. I want you to start the course with land nav, right? That's one of the first solid moves you can make a jump for, given what might be written in terms of the pin chip configuration, right? And that's going to be your basic algebra and trig and geometry and calculus, right, on your pawn rows. And you're going through that with, what is here, another pawn, but this would be integral algebra tool, right? That's your, from land nav to integral algebra tool to, what do we got here? Yang-Mills mass gap. We have Sophie Germain in STEM, and we have what I use for Poincure's conjecture. We have Brickenjar's conjecture, I do believe is what that is. Here we have impossible Warden problem, 3B1B. That would be this night. And down here we have what is sonar, some wave function, position, location, variables on what that does, followed through by what is Couch's theorem, I think is what that is. And or what do we got here? Yeah, Couch's chaos and organization theory. Now, on the black side of the team, obviously, my house theory is one of those pawns as well. Back to this bad puppy right here in the center of the board. It's a build. It's a quadrant section. And so again, you're going to keep that running with different types of topology problems, Poincure to Hodges, right? And NP problem instead of mass gap. And here's the black queen of STEM running a billiard FMA problem to deal with the numbers of collisions that could happen here in orientations and position. Kyle Hill talking about Oppenheimer and enriching photons. Pensrose space-time talking about black holes, white holes. Wolfram Alpha, Parth G, particle spin. Here we got, what is it, optimization. Then you got, I think this is Couch's theorem actually here. and I know I got one for crypto. I can't really read that one out right now. I forget what it is. And I forget what both of those are. But my point, combatives, here is air turbulence and air superiority, kind of MiG-1 to MiG-2 conversational models, making that Wolfram Alpha number make sense to whatever wave function you're dealing with here in terms of why that operation might change, right, Carl? That's the winning gambit if it's orientated position that way.